This is I Have No Title and I Must Podcast, the show where we discuss any and all aspects of pop culture on our mind at our time. We are your hosts, Tyler
and Chris.
And even though scheduling has gotten in the way and we've not seen Oppenheimer, we thought now is as good a time as any to discuss Christopher Nolan. I know a lot of people think Chris may have a grudge against Nolan.
A personal grudge.
But for me, Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite directors. And I do think that some people need to calm down about it. Just because Christopher Nolan is a great director doesn't mean that other directors need to be, what did you say, criticized more harshly?
Maligned.
Yes. But I will say, I think Christopher Nolan can be a good inspiration for anybody that wants to get into filmmaking, because he did not go to film school. Couldn't get in, actually. So
too many. Michael Bay just beat him to the punch. Yeah. There was only enough seats for 29 students.
So Christopher Nolan, he just got an English degree, and his first movie was made with basically no budget. It was just him and his friends one day a week for a year to make this movie.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And it was actually kind of genius how he got a lot of this stuff done.
Well, that's Memento, right?
No, that was his second movie.
Really? Oh, was he? There was what was the first one?
It was called The Following.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Proceed.
Like I said, no budget, no time, and, just a little clever ingenuity to get things done. It's like borrowed everything, and to make it look professional, he made sure that the first scene and the last scene were done with actual dolly setups for the camera, so that everything else in the middle, when they couldn't afford one, looked intentional. So any shake, anything, and it's like, oh yeah, well, he can do that, so this is intentional. And then they just did a lot of retakes without the camera rolling to just gather audio. He never did more than 2 takes with the camera. And if they needed more audio, it was just pre-recorded audio without the camera.
Do you know what year that was?
I want to say sometime in the late 90s. I want to say 96, but I'm not sure on that.
We should appreciate that was most likely done all on film.
Yes, all film stock.
Because, and at the time, now he has a choice. At the time, he most likely did not have a choice to go with digital, or it was just more convenient to do film like he's doing here. So that's even more impressive. Just to dispel that horrible rumor that some people have been starting, most likely perpetrated by myself also. I don't actually have a grudge against Chris Nolan. The fraternity of Chris's is a sacred one to me, and I respect what he does. He actually, one of my favorite films of all time, starring Hubert Jackman and a Christian Bale, is The Prestige. I saw that in the theater several times. I watch it. I average about once a year, maybe a year and a half. I try to come back to that. I always catch something new. When I was a kid, somebody said they watch something, you can catch something new in it every time. And I thought, you, are you not paying attention? You can watch something 10 times and this is the case in this movie, though. If you want, there's no way, whether it's a concept or an interaction, or even the way two seemingly unconnected events from beginning to end, because there's so many timelines, not actual time, multiverse timelines, but points in the story that we keep bouncing back and forth from, which is a trademark of his, how they intersect and work together. There's always something to catch in this film, and I absolutely love it. So that's what I do. It's our job to critique, and when I will critique harsher on somebody who I really like. If I just don't care, Michael Bay's films are not for me. They're not made for me. So they don't make me mad. They don't, they're just kind of there. Kind of hard to ignore because they're so loud. Just trying to watch a quiet indie film over in the next theater, but boom goes the dynamite. Anyway, and if I were to watch them, I could critique them harshly. A lot of people do, and some people just, it was a fun romp or whatever. But when I do like a director, which Nolan ranks somewhere in the middle for me, if I'm honest. But again, he directed The Dark Knight. It was 1 in a million that he even did that, went into that genre, and remained kind of in the area. He was a producer on some of Snyder's films, wasn't he? So, and I think they maybe wanted him to come back to that, or even wanted to incorporate that universe into, because it could have easily been, that could have easily been our Batman.
Yeah.
Or at least that world, not far off from different color palette. But
I mean, Zack Snyder clearly took a lot of inspiration for that when he did Superman. It had that same kind of tone.
Yeah, it's very, they really could mesh well, easily. And then, even Battinson's Batman could be, I didn't misspeak. You heard me. That could be that world, which mostly, is that universe, is it just always night? Is it like 17 hours of night? Is Gotham actually located in Alaska? Yeah. I think it's better that way. So, any other stories about Nolan?
So we can go on. Like his clear hate for like CG and computers.
Yes, which we talk a lot about loving practical effects. I do love practical effects.
It could be argued that Nolan takes that a little too far sometimes. Because I know some people have made the joke, the reason he resonates so much with Batman is because his origin story is very similar to Batman, but instead of it being a criminal that killed his family, it was CGI and computers. But I will say, one thing that I do think is cool is Nolan, I don't know if a lot of people recognize, but actually borrows from anime in several of his movies. Go watch Paprika by another great director that was gone far too soon before his time, Satoshi Kon, which we'll probably make an episode about that on its own later. But the hallway scene in Inception is very, very much an homage to a hallway scene in Paprika, where everything's getting distorted and the room's moving while they're trying to do a chase scene, which I thought that was really cool to see it done practically in real life outside of an animated movie.
This wouldn't have made or broken the X-Men Apocalypse film, but apparently when they were in the writing stages of it, they had parallel thinking with Chris Nolan and wanted to do something extremely similar with a hallway scene where they would construct a movable set that would twist and wind in Professor X's mind whenever he's fighting Apocalypse. Inception came out. They beat him to it. The scene was too similar, so they changed it, like not drastically, but yeah, because it's literally a fight in your mindscape. You could do literally anything. So that there was a lot of balls dropped in that film. So that's neither here nor there. But clearly an inspiration to a lot of filmmakers and knows where and is a fan of good cinema too. You can tell good stock. You see your own. Whenever you can see somebody who likes the same things, you're like, we like the same movies. That's always fun. Except with Michael Bay. Now people are going to think I hate Michael Bay. I'm not redeeming myself here with the Christopher Nolan crowd. Go straighten your ascot. Yeah, take a minute and straighten your ascot. Oh, and don't spill your port. I don't want you to, get your brie cheese all in order. And keep nibbling while you're listening. And, if you, unless you're doing chores around the house, sorry, you wouldn't be doing chores around the house while you're ordering your butler around to do your chores around the house. Buckle in. This is going to be a medium one. So, favorite Nolan film?
I think we're in agreement on favorite Nolan film. It's The Prestige.
That's yours too?
Yeah. Though, if you put any one of them on in front of me, I'm going to watch it.
Something I've always been torn about The Prestige is, and this is something, I try not to lean too heavily on this because I did in high school and I got annoying with it. But David Bowie is my favorite. My favorite what? Right. So when I'm a huge Nikola Tesla fan too. Yes, I can be fan of scientists. Whether you know everything about him and know that he was actually like pretty boring, or you're a bigger fan of like the mythological version of him that is like an insane autistic genius, whichever. And I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. Honestly, none of us were there and there's evidence for both. So I mean, people are like, oh, he was a socialite. He went to all these things. Like, yeah, like autistic people can do that. We can mask sometimes and go there. And then we can also befriend pigeons that we fall in love with that think laser beams come out of their eyes. It's a completely normal thing to do. So David Bowie famously does not look like Nikola Tesla. This was and apparently Nolan like really wanted him to play Nikola Tesla. Like he would not accept no for an answer, which David Bowie gave him an answer, and it was no. And I think it was because Bowie's health was beginning to decline at that time. Nolan eventually, I can't recall the full story, but Nolan did get him to agree to do it. Obviously, he was in the film. And I thought, well, this is amazing. David Bowie doesn't look anything like Nikola Tesla, but he really sold it. It's like, I just forget all about that and don't even care. Especially that I really think that the time, it was an odd choice because I think when he was at Wardenclyffe, especially, he was much thinner in the face. Tesla always looked a bit gaunt, and up to when he died. And when he was in Colorado, I can't remember at what age he was, but there's photos from it, and Bowie doesn't look anything like that. It's just a funny thing to me that like he had an idea in his head, Nolan, about getting Bowie to play this, an iconic character, to play this iconic character on, two mythological beings. And it meshed perfectly. It worked so well. He took a gamble on that and it worked so well. And Bowie really put in the chops to like get it down and really sold it and transcended the fact that it wasn't there. And some people are probably going to say like, no, he looked exactly like him. Did you see that makeup? And they parted his hair just right. Go look at a photograph. Anyway, I love it though. I didn't care at all. I still don't care. I just think these things should be looked at. But I mean, if you have something in mind, I think the spirit of it could transcend that. Adrian Brody played Houdini. Adrian Brody, I think I've mentioned this before on the show. He's famously 7 feet 6 inches tall. He's an incredibly tall, thin man. He's super skinny. I don't know what he weighs, but I'm pretty sure he wears 3 suits at all times to make him look like he's not a gangly alien. And he played Harry Houdini in a made-for-TV like miniseries. Harry Houdini was 4 feet 9 inches tall. He was practically a homunculus.
He was the real-life Wolverine.
Harry Houdini being 3 feet tall and weighed 500 pounds. He was like an atomic bomb wrapped up in flesh. He was a black hole of energy. And they were like, it. We're going to have the tallest man in showbiz play this guy. I mean, it'd be like if you said, all right, we're going to make a biopic for David Bowie. Christopher Nolan, you're going to get to do it. Who do you want? We got Tilda Swinton could play Bowie, or we could dig up the Elephant Man bones and just reanimate them using strings and wires. And he's like, that one. And they're like, seriously, Tilda Swinton, she's actually here. She showed up for an audition. Unnecessary. Okay, sure. We'll make it work. But, and Adrian Brody actually did a great job in that. Yeah, he got the accent down. They're both... Adrian Brody's Jewish, right? I'm like 95% sure.
He did play in The Pianist. So.
Yeah, and Eric Weiss.
So if he's not, he's good at playing one.
If not a Jew, but plays one on TV. No, I think he is actually Jewish, and that's it. It comes through. There's a certain spirit you can embody, and I think he probably fought for that role and was like, no, I want this one, and probably not just for it, because he couldn't have made much money. It was like made for TV for like the History Channel or A&E or something, and not bad. Check that. I've mentioned it a few times. Check that out. I just love Houdini. I love these biopics of these people. Like we've gotten away. I did the thing that I did back in our early days. I got way too off topic, but that was talking about Bowie in this. And you brought up Wolverine. Yeah, the singing Wolverine,
who was also in that movie. I know. May be a shocker to people, but I'm going to go a little off topic. I know we're known for not doing that, but a little fun fact talking about Tesla made me think of this, who famously had a rivalry with Thomas Edison. Mm-hmm. And it's actually because people hated Edison so much that California is the spot where everyone thinks of as the movie place, because they're like, we hate Edison so much. We've got to get as far away from him as possible. So the powers that be took all their money, their lots, and went to California. Because Edison wanted the hot spot for filmmaking to be in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So everyone just went to Hollywood and said, we're getting away from this guy.
You can kill your elephants all day long in New Jersey. Everything's legal in New Jersey. There's a Hamilton reference. I worked in a Hamilton reference. That's right. Yeah.
Anyway, back to Christopher Nolan. The topic of
We
this.
never left Christopher Nolan. He's omnipresent. And he's omnipresent on the show. He keeps coming up week after week somehow. Even though I don't mean to make people think that I hate him, because I really don't, as you can see.
And I will continue to defend Tenet.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Dark Knight trilogy. Here's where it might get. No, I don't think I have any really hot takes on this. I like the first one with some. I have notes. We'll say notes. I don't have major critiques. I think a lot of things in that were inspired. Second film, The Dark Knight, masterpiece. Wouldn't touch it. Wouldn't change a thing. Amazing. Third one, what the. And not completely. Like, it had some good ideas, but it felt like Sam Raimi's thing with the Spider-Man 3.
I wonder if that was
the case.
More like studio
interference. That's what I was going to say. Is that, I mean, it's like Sam Raimi it was like they kept messing with him. They kept wanting a certain thing. He had an idea for the original Spider-Man 3. Nowhere near what came out. Studio kept interfering, wanting different things, and then finally he just gave up, relented, and made a movie.
Yeah.
And it was like his heart wasn't in it at all. There were things. I mean, do you think the studio asked for there to just be like a gigantic fist fight with the police in the end of the movie? Like, they were like, all right, we're free. Let's go get our fisticuff gloves. I don't know. I could joke about that all day. But The Dark Knight, I do want to say, like, the first one, Batman Begins. He chose a clever idea to choose titles for each of these instead of, Batman 1, Batman 2. A lot of people have done that, but it's still worth mentioning. It's all the rage right now. I'm glad of it. I think sometimes they up when they do that, when it's just like something Requiem or what. It's like, I mean, could you be more specific?
Just a little bit.
Like with Spider-Man, the home thing, I don't know how they got trapped into that theme. Having said that, at least it goes with each film. Yeah. You can say that and know which one it is. Because I always thought, well, when Garfield's first film came out, it was The Amazing Spider-Man. And I thought, oh, his sequel might be The Spectacular Spider-Man. And then other titles. I'm glad they didn't do that. That's a good idea, but you're kind of locked in. Like, he was The Amazing Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3. That's fine. I don't know what our Spider-Man is now. But at least Homecoming, it's the one with the homecoming. The No Way Home. It's the one where he just can't get home. And you know which one you're talking about. If you're like, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, it's that one where they had to do a ghost protocol? Which one is that? That's like all of them, right? Or like Mission Impossible Transcendence. Ooh. What are they transcending this time? The laws of me being able to think that... Never mind. Well, I won't go into Tom Cruise's acting in this, but Cillian Murphy as the Scarecrow, growing up, I saw Tim Burton's Batman films in the theater. I wore those VHSs out. If I were to find my old copies, you could probably pull out that videotape and see it worn thin, and put it in, and it just looks crunchy. Because I put that on every day. I would just have it on in the background. I wouldn't even watch it. It would be like an audio adventure while I'm playing with my action figures. So then the subsequent films in the 90s came out, and they weren't great. I didn't like them even then. They were okay, I was a big Jim Carrey fan, but even then he went way over the top, even for my immature teenage sensibilities. So a grown-up Batman film set in the real world, that's sometimes maybe too realistic. Sure. But the Scarecrow was always one of my favorite villains, or even just the concept as a villain. And this, I felt his ideas for it, just having him in a suit. He puts the mask on. The mask looked great. Cillian Murphy. He's one of the actors I didn't mention in our thing. I don't think, unless I gave him an honorable mention. I don't think I did. He's got this face that's just, he's too good looking. He's good looking, but he looks like he's trying to get one over on you. Like he could just squint his eyes and you're like, whoa, this sent a chill down my spine. And not necessarily in a good way. He always gets typecast. He's always going to get typecast for not evil people, just villainous people. Yeah. Like the evil CEO or something, or a psychiatrist that's gone bad and drives people crazy. He does the opposite of what you think. There was a film called Sunshine where he plays a heroic character, good guy. He does it so well. It's such an amazing actor. I don't think people understand how good he is because he's been typecast in darker roles too often. He's so good. Having said that, they hit the nail on the head with this one, getting him to play Crane. I wish we could have gotten to see the full-on suit in daylight and not him just being dragged away by a horse. It's a head-to-toe straight jacket he's wearing on top of his suit with the mask and everything. It looked amazing, but you only get a split second of it at the end of the movie.
Well, I know he originally auditioned for Batman.
That's been circulating recently, the footage of that.
And, it's one of those things. It kind of goes to show his quality that, he's like, you're not right for this role, but we have to keep you. Yeah, will you play something else?
Yeah, it reminds me of when there were all those interviews for the first Thor movie, and they're talking to Tom Hiddleston, and they're like, so, what was your first interaction with this? And he's like, well, I wanted to play a different character. And they're like, who? And he kind of looks behind his shoulder at the poster and points up at the gigantic Thor figure. And I was like, there must be something wrong psychologically with Tom Hiddleston. He must be one of those people whose ego far outweighs the weight of their body. This man is 95 pounds, soaking wet. He doesn't have jet black hair in real life, but I'm like, whenever you smile, crows caw and flock away. And you're like, I want to play the gigantic hero from mythology, the one who wields a hammer and can move mountains with just a flick of his fingers. And really. So that footage has been released too. Cillian Murphy is like, you know what I want to do? I want to play Batman. And I'm like, guys, have you looked in a mirror? You are perfect, but not for those roles.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's fun. I'm poking at them. I love that's why I'm having fun with it. Yeah. It's because I love these guys. I love them where they are. They are perfect for those roles. We need those roles. You know how often somebody gets born and they look like Mads Mikkelsen? You're not gonna be Batman, but you could be Dr. Doom all day long.
Can we get Mads Mikkelsen as Dr. Doom now?
Oh my God. If prayers come true, we'll find out. Who knows? Anyway, what do you want to say about Heath Ledger?
I wish we could see more Heath Ledger. Sadly, we can't, but that was one hell of a performance.
That's one, just like with Michael Keaton being cast as Batman, the press was not kind. Michael Keaton got announced as Batman. It was, Mr. Mom, our next Batman, ridiculous. And it was, Heath Ledger had been in some teen drama movies, rom-coms and the like.
I was always on Heath Ledger's side on that. Everyone's like, oh man, Heath Ledger is the Joker. I don't know about that. I'm like, why not? Have you seen the man smile? He looks like the Joker without makeup.
I'd seen a lot of things he'd been in, and I didn't see, at that point I was an adult and I wasn't as judgmental. Hayden Christensen got a lot of hate for it. He's only just now being redeemed. The Star Wars fandom is only just now full on accepting him, and it's a real turn of events, I think, in his favor, and that's great. Heath Ledger did not need 15 years to do that. They just needed they just needed the trailer to drop.
Yeah.
And we were going to be seeing something we hadn't really seen before. The writing, the directing, and the performance all combined, I think, changed people's perspective on the Joker permanently. And it also, it would go on to influence everything that came after. Either you're going to copy it, or you're going to try to stray so far away from it as to not copy it, like what Johnny Depp did with Willy Wonka, that you do something questionable, like what Jared Leto did. I don't think Jared Leto's a bad actor, but he did a bad job with the Joker because he was trying to do anything but Heath Ledger's performance and get so far away from it and do something different still. If they had done classic Joker, just like nose, grin, white face, no face, forehead tattoos, whatever, I think he would have been fine.
Yeah.
I think if he just did a stock performance, but Heath Ledger it for everybody by doing something so amazing.
I was actually watching a video recently talking about like the wrong lessons Hollywood learned. It's like Christopher Nolan did such a great job with that movie that everything else had to be dark and gritty after that.
Yeah.
For better or worse.
Yeah. Yeah, when you just copy it, that's always the wrong lesson if you take into account. But I mean, it's not just like going dark and gritty wasn't what made those films good. It was the writing, the editing, the acting, the focus pulling, and the directing. And at the end of the day, those decisions made in a collaborative process. You get lightning in a bottle, sometimes you can't go back and get that. The MCU is going to fall into this trap too. They made some movies that were really good. There were a few gaps in there. There was bad movies or not as well received movies, especially later on when you have time and perspective. And they began to lean away from what DC was doing and lean into their comedy. I think people are misjudging. Thor 5 has been announced. There's a lot of debate about this because you have Thor 3 was very well received and it was comedy. People forget it was a straight up comedy. It's just it worked into buddy comedy too. You had Thor and the Hulk, or mostly it was, and then he turns into Bruce Banner again, and then back into the Hulk, and it worked. They made a comedy. It was funny beginning to end. Some of it, not all the jokes landed, but the characters were having fun, and you could see it. The next movie, the plot is basically one of the main characters. It's a long-standing character in the MCU has cancer and is dying. And they decided to make that one into a comedy as well. So there's a lot of mixed messages and there's a lot of things that fall flat because it's not funny and the subject matter is not funny and they tried to push too hard on it being funny. I counter with that movie should have been a tragedy. It should have been the darkest like darker than Infinity War or Endgame, not Infinity War, and put Thor through the ringer again by making him lose everything yet again. If that's what they wanted, if that's the story they wanted to tell, have there be light moments, but now everyone's saying they shouldn't make this next one a comedy, make it a straight action movie, and they're going back and forth. But I think they forget that the third one was a comedy too. It wasn't like Die Hard or RoboCop or, it was a straight up comedy. I think people are forgetting, and that was only a few years ago. So when you have like the Dark Knight trilogy worked so well because you had amazing talent working on it. You don't have to. Then when Zack Snyder took over and went into not rebooting but forming a connected universe, it's gonna be dark. It's like the connections that they made saying, well, there's we have the Dark Knight trilogy and it's got a few moments of levity and they work almost like knee-jerk reactions because the rest of it is so dark. But those films just flowed well, except for the third one. And the third one had good moments in it, but the guy's real name is Robin? Is that Joseph Gordon-Levitt? Is he like, I want to go by my real name from now on?
They said that was like a nickname for him or something. I don't know.
That's a weird connection to have to say like he's not Robin. And I was like, well, if they continue it on, Joseph Gordon-Levitt would have made it perfect. Like if they skipped Robin and went straight to Nightwing. Yeah, it's just there you go. There's problem fixed. Why throw Robin in there as an Easter egg? Like that always baffled me. I always thought that was questionable. Just for who was that for?
I think that was the studio
saying mention Robin. Like mention Robin somewhere in there. I don't know. I'd like to can we get Christopher Nolan on the show and put him in the hot box? I have some questions. Also, so is he not going to have his knee replaced? Or just like robotic? Never mind. Anyway, Michael Caine. They got Michael Caine to play Alfred, and he did it just gleefully. Like, it did all three films and sold that performance. Like, Jeremy Irons is good. I don't think he's the best Alfred. For me, it's, I think Michael Gough is his name from the Burton, the original Burtonverse, and then he continued. He was the one main thread playing Alfred through to the end of those films, which are only tenuously connected through him. He was amazing, but Michael Caine.
I mean, that's another staple of a lot of Nolan's movies, getting Michael Caine to come in and deliver an awesome performance.
Yeah. Any other, I mean, I focused on primarily, these are what I'm most acquainted with of his films. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on? We've talked about Tenet in other podcasts. Is there a Nolan film we haven't really talked about?
I don't think we've talked about Memento at all.
Memento kind of freaks me out.
It is such a good movie, though.
Yeah.
Like, if someone's like, I don't know which Nolan film to start with, go ahead and start with that one. It's his second film. It's still on the lower budget side, but it is so well written, so well shot and edited that it's great. You could easily watch it a couple times and still, get something out of it, because the whole movie's told through an unreliable narrator. And so you don't know what's real and what's not. And the main character cannot form short-term memories. So he doesn't know what's real and what's not. He just thinks he does.
And he's making a record of things through Polaroids?
Yeah, like Polaroids and like tattoos and notes.
Really, tattoos?
Yeah. I think there's a part like he actually pulls his shirt off and looking in the mirror, and like anything that he thinks is super important, he will tattoo on himself so that when he looks in the mirror, he can just see his notes and not have to remember where they're at. But yeah, that movie was very well done. It could easily have been confusing and convoluted. Some might argue that it is, but I think it's well done and worth a watch.
Yeah, it's lauded as a landmark in storytelling, because he took something that potentially could have been that confusing and misleading. The Batman films were pretty start to finish. There's not a lot of Inception-y kind of weirdness in there, except that he has that ending there that's up for interpretation. Yeah. I think it's pretty cut and dry, actually.
It's kind of a thing with Nolan is like he always explores the perception of time, whether it's a race against it or the direction it flows or the order of things in your mind. And that's kind of one of the things with Memento. We're watching the movie in reverse order, kind of, or in two different directions. Talking about Cillian Murphy having one of those faces, Guy Pearce. He just looks like he's up to something, no matter what.
Yeah.
Good guy, bad guy. He just has one of those faces. You're like, I don't know if I trust you.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this is a perfect casting for this, because you're like, okay, you're the guy we're following. We're supposed to be on your side. I don't know if I trust you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you trust you.
And there you go. And that's another one. I think the highest praise I can give Nolan is that he and his brother construct films that are specifically designed to be viewed multiple times.
Yes.
And not just, if you think about you have to buy it and then watch it again, or you have to go back to the theater. You could look at it cynically and say it's a cash grabbing device, but no, your favorite story you mentioned on the review episode, you love the Venture Brothers, one of your all-time favorite show, if not your all-time favorite show, and you love to go back to it occasionally. There's not necessarily, a Nolan-esque storytelling element to that forces you or that rewards you for that. You just love those characters. You just want to see them have fun or get murdered or do whatever again.
I think there is a similarity there, because there are a lot of layers with the Venture Brothers, like references and jokes. Some don't pay off until a couple seasons. They'll be like a throwaway line. You're like, it's kind of funny in the moment. And then you go like 2 seasons later, then you're like, holy shit, that's hilarious. I get it. And Nolan movies, not necessarily in the funny way or the referential way, but there's usually a lot of complex layers and subtleties that you miss, that you only see on rewatchings. And that's part of the fun for me is, can I pick those out? Where are those at? And that to me is just enjoyable. I feel like I get the bang for my buck if I do buy one of his movies.
Yeah, I don't look at it cynically. I think it's rewarding to there's so few films that the minute those credits roll, you're like, hit it again. And let's figure this out. Or I want, what the f-? And then the second time you watch it, you're watching it again, but for the first time. It's like whenever you hit the end of a video game and then you go back and play it without Samus's armor. It's like you're playing a different video game, but you're not really. You're watching the same movie. It's the exact same movie, but now your perception is different. And it's not just like when you go back and watch, whatever old Disney movie, like I could watch Fantasia again, but it's just demons and dancing hippopotami. That's fine. You can rewatch it, and it's a cinematic masterpiece, but you're just watching it again. If you watch some of these Nolan films again, they get completely recontextualized. Your brain will perceive them completely differently than you did the first time, and that is a mark of great writing and great storytelling. The editing, you could edit these films. Yeah. Someone could re-edit these films and they could take place sequentially in chronological order, but there's no fun in that. There's something challenging. It's all, and it's not like J.J. Abrams' Puzzle Box. There is a mystery element to a lot of these, but it's satisfying. You get rewarded. And you don't necessarily get, like you've talked about with Tenet, he doesn't hold your hand through it. You might have to watch it 2 or 3 times, but every time you're gonna get closer to like it, you being like, oh my God, there it is. And I missed that before. He straight up told us at the beginning.
Another thing that I like about Nolan's movies that might not be obvious is the perfectly imperfectness of it. Because unlike Stanley Kubrick, who would reshoot a scene thousands of times until it is what he wanted and it's perfect, or at least in his mind, Christopher Nolan doesn't. He's like, we're going to do a handful of takes, we'll take the best one. And so it's just like, you got those little bit of imperfections in there, good, that makes you human, that's what we want, let's go. So it feels more believable. It's like, I don't say my words correctly every time. I mean, I'm sure anybody that listens to this podcast will hear me stumble my words many times. I'm pretty sure I did this at the start of this episode. But we don't get to do takes and retakes in life. So those imperfections, I think, add to the story and the immersion. And so that's another thing that I appreciate on that. And another lesson that we can all learn is take some of the imperfections to make it perfect.
Yeah, guys, stop criticizing Tyler behind his back. It's really mean. You know what? I'm disgusted with all of you. Leave your comments down below. Anybody who can pick out all of Tyler's mistakes will win a prize. I'm not going to say what the prize is, but it will be something you don't already have. Anyway, I think I've proven that I don't hate Christopher Nolan. And sometimes I think some people couldn't tell when I'm joking and when I'm not. I try to be as sincere as possible, even when I'm joking about something. Like if I push on something, like I said, if I didn't already love something, I don't feel the need to bash somebody just because I don't like their style or whatever. Like if somebody enjoys the Transformers films, I don't want to take that away from them. That's bad. Like enjoy it for what it is. And if you graduate to a more adult cinematic fare, good. And if you don't, and you just want to keep enjoying that, that's fine too. I'm not criticizing you as a person or whatever. Those films just aren't for me. At one time, they may have been. They just no longer are. And I do like Nolan. I don't always agree with his subject matter, what he chooses to do or make, but he definitely has proven himself as a premier filmmaker of our time. I respect him and his work, and I love some of his work. I don't love all of it. I will remain divided on it, at least some of it, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I love Tim Burton's films. I think Tim Burton's made some really bad films. I think he's made some really questionable content choices because he doesn't write. Well, he works with different writers and he gets pitched different ideas and then he's up for some of them. I think aesthetically, he's one of the most pleasing directors for me. He's of a certain crowd, and we don't have a lot of directors like that. There's not a whole lot of directors that make content specifically for 90s goth kids. He's our guy. So when he makes a bad film, I like to be highly hypercritical of it because I want something better from him. There's the old story about the jazz. I think it was a trumpet player, and he was pushed. He had to be pushed because if he hadn't, he wouldn't have made something better, more beautiful. I don't remember the names. If somebody knows what I'm talking about, please tell me because I'm lost. I'm just as lost as you are. But that's what we have to, it has to be constructive criticism. It has to come from, I don't think my criticism here is going to make Tim Burton a better director. Just,
What if it does? What if the next movie is like dedicated?
If somebody actually hears this, if it's somebody like way down in like his, creative the storyboards or something, somebody who's just doing some like conceptual art for his next film, and they happen to listen to this for whatever reason, and then they're like, let's redo Peregrines, let's get it right this time. I know what they were trying to do there. I just oh well. But yeah, I want to see better from those people. He already has his team. He works with his brother. His brother writes most of the films. He works with his brother. Nolan does, not Tim Burton. And then they do what they do, and they do it well. And let's keep it coming. Again, I haven't seen Oppenheimer yet, but I'm not opposed to it. I've just
time gets away from us.
Yeah.
That, I think it's a good place to wrap up. You might have swayed people into thinking your grudge against Nolan is.
I may have convinced our listener.
But if you've made it with us this far, thank you. And if you would, follow us on our social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook. Like, subscribe, share, comment, all that good stuff. And special thanks for Chase for helping with the music.
Helping me with the music.
Helping Chris with the music.
Yeah. Chase did an amazing job of helping me.
We'll leave links for him in the comments below as well. And until next time, see you.